Joining us now for a look at how this could impact investments from abroad is Rod Phillips, Chair of Toronto Global, Vice Chair at Canaccord Genuity, and former Ontario Finance Minister. Rod Phillips, good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you.
So let's talk about Doug Ford. Premier Doug Ford, just recently re-elected after really launching a campaign based on Donald Trump's tariffs here. He's threatening to pull liquor off LCBO shelves, anything American, also the SpaceX contract, Starlink, etc. Let's talk about the provincial response first here. What do you make of how Premier Ford is tackling the Trump tariffs?
You know, Nick, I think Premier Ford's speaking for a lot of Canadians about the, I don't know, no other word for it, the anger we feel about the situation we're in, but in a measured way. So you talk and try to negotiate. And I know federal and provincial officials have been spending time, business people have been spending time, Toronto Global's been spending time talking to our American colleagues, but we're dealing with one person here, Donald Trump, who's decided he wants a trade war. And so I think the Premier's tough talk is appropriate.
Does it feel like, not the wasted breath, because the idea of fighting for Canada and Ontario, I completely understand, but when Donald Trump justifies it on the one hand saying this is about fentanyl coming across the border, when demonstrably Canada is not responsible for anything significant, I realize we don't want any, that you don't really know what you're dealing with on the other side. So you have these conversations, but how do you plan?
Listen, I think Donald Trump's, he's unusual. I think in some ways he's very clear about what he wants. And I think what he wants is Canadian jobs moved to the United States. And I think what Premier Ford's talking about, what other Canadian leaders are talking about is, that's not acceptable. So fentanyl, I mean, it's 1% of the fentanyl. It'd be great if it was 0% of the fentanyl. We'd all think that was better. We don't like the American guns coming across the border into Toronto and other places as well. So we can all do better. But this is essentially about moving Canadian jobs to the United States. And he's willing to punish Canadians on that behalf. I think what Premier Ford's saying is Americans are going to get that punishment as well. And we will see. The United States isn't one man. It's a big country. We both know a lot of Americans. They don't have an inherent dislike for Canadians. I don't know if Donald Trump does or not. I don't think I care. I don't think other people care. I think we have to be strong and united.
So Donald Trump is going to be hearing a lot from a lot of men and women, I think south of the border as well. Whether he's listening is another issue. But I wonder, as a former finance minister for this province, when you look at potentially the auto sector, 100,000 jobs could be on layoff within a week. The sector could shut down. What does that, in your mind, say and do?
I mean, it is tragic for individual families and communities that rely on these jobs. I've been speaking to leaders in the auto sector. They're saying the same thing the Premier is saying. I'm sure he's spoken to them well. We're going to see plants closing inside of 7 to 10 days because the business reality, not just in the auto sector, but in other sectors, doesn't allow business to continue. Unfortunately, that kind of strong reaction might be what is necessary to shake people up and say, wait a minute, what we have isn't perfect. Although what we have was negotiated by Donald Trump, we got to remember, with the USMCA. But we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. We want to be clear that the trade benefits everybody. And if we start seeing hundreds of thousands of people on both sides of the border, and don't forget about Mexico, similar problems there, then I think people will have to start to take this very seriously.
So we're seeing the initial responses. Of course, Canada has this initial tranche of about $30 billion worth of U.S. goods, ultimately growing to $155 million, potentially within about 3 weeks' time. But because of our proximity and geography to the United States, I realize we're trying to expand trade at different parts. That's not easy, and that's not going to be overnight.
Yeah, listen, what Toronto Global's focused on is making sure that we, like every other big city region in the world, have a focus on bringing jobs from around the world. So places like Asia, places like Africa, Europe, the Middle East. So those are all opportunities. But the reality is, as they say about real estate, location, location, location. Canada has benefited from being closest to the largest market in the world, and that's not going to change. Our geography isn't going to change. So yes, we have to diversify our trade. That's an important role that we need government and business to be a part of. But we have to resolve an issue with the United States, and we have to resolve this issue forcefully for now.
So let me ask a difficult question for Toronto Global in terms of how appealing is Toronto to come to and work at, or maybe even invest in, at a time where Donald Trump has his sights set on Ontario and Canada?
Right now, I think people around the world, we have to recognize recognize as well, this is something that's happening internationally. There's issues related to trade and recalibration of trade happening globally. But Canada, Ontario, Toronto is a jurisdiction people can trust. And I think increasingly people are going to be looking for people to do business with people that they can trust. There's 7 million consumers just in the Greater Toronto area. That's a big market. Yes, it has traditionally also been a gateway to the United States. I hope that'll be true in the future as well. But again, trust, as they say, business moves at the speed of trust. Right now, there's not a lot of trust with Donald Trump. And I think we need to make sure people see that we can be trusted.
So there's going to be pressure from people. It looks like the markets are definitely, they struggled yesterday as soon as the tariffs came into effect, likely going to happen again today. And this is global markets as well. At what point do you even think that Donald Trump could respond or react to say, oh my gosh, maybe I do need to backtrack, or is that just so unpredictable too?
That's so unpredictable too. Yeah. This is a person. He has whatever plans he has. He's talked about all manner of things related to Canada, related to other parts of the world. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to respond with strength. We also have to make sure that we start to do the things to clean up our own house. There's things that have been put off because we've been in this place of sitting beside the greatest market in the world and the largest market in the world. So we have to deal with interprovincial trade barriers. We have to deal with the regulations that get in the way of business. We have to deal with the things that get in the way of investment in Canada. And I think a lot of that, if you want to see a silver lining in this, and it's hard this morning when you think about the impacts to see a silver lining, but this is going to focus us. Sometimes we all know what we need to do to improve, but there's something, we hear it one day and it really sounds clear. I think today Canadians are hearing it more clearly. We need to take care of our own challenges too, to be in a strong position to compete in the world.
Yeah, we've definitely got the task laid out in front of us. Rod Phillips, Toronto Global, former finance minister. Do appreciate the time. Thank you for being here.